Well, let's get started. I'm Jennifer Goodman. I'm the director of the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance. Great to have you as a participant in this virtual session sponsored by the Preservation Alliance. We're the statewide nonprofit membership-based organization, as you all know. This gathering is part of our regular and ongoing work, wanting to serve property owners, community leaders in all kinds of different ways, helping with those critical rescues, revitalizations, and stewardship projects, as well as kind of community-wide preservation, education, bringing incentives to town, all kinds of things like that. We've done over 30 Zooms since the start of this pandemic mess on a whole range of topics. We're always learning and adapting from them. We've done old barns, moisture management, fundraising and communications, a whole mix of topics, and we plan to do a lot more as we also start folding in-person gatherings again, hopefully late summer into the fall. And really love the opportunity today to kind of step back and step forward, I guess, just to have a kind of an informal, wide-ranging conversation about North Country, the special places of the North Country and historic preservation issues and opportunities. You know, as we said in our message, we know there's a lot of good news to go along with the sorry, sad, bad news of recent losses because of fire in Errol and Jefferson. I think we also all know that it's not one size all. There's a huge mix of issues and opportunities. We also know there's long-standing challenges related to economic and land use issues. We know there's the layer of new problems related to COVID and long-standing issues like connectivity and access, stirring in the pot of historic preservation. So I guess we really hope that we know that this conversation for us is just going to give us some ideas, Preservation Alliance ideas, as we build out future programs and think about our ongoing technical services and coaching, the 101 help, and the grant making that we do. We hope you take away a couple new practical ideas, maybe a couple more connections, and hopefully a little dose of inspiration along the way. Very glad to have Maggie Steer with me, colleague at the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, and I know a lot of you know. And I think Lorraine Merrill, who's a current board member of ours, is also going to be joining as part of the conversation if she hasn't already. Just need to do the plug and thank everybody who's a member and supporter of our work. We're a nonprofit, and most of our daily operations are paid for by people like you, members and business supporters. Helps us, you know, your support helps us do more programs like this, help save our 7 to Save properties. We were in the State House yesterday, virtually in the State House yesterday, working to make sure that there's good preservation resources on the state and local level, and really just trying to do as much as we can to encourage, accelerate more preservation investment, more help to folks like you. We are recording this session. I just wanted to make sure you knew that. There's a whole library of recorded sessions available on our website. I'll send a link of those to you if you haven't seen them already in the post-event email that we'll send everybody. We ask that you do stay muted unless you're saying something. And depending on how many people want to talk, we'll either call on people or use the chat function. I'd say let's focus on using the chat function during the kind of open section, open dialogue part of this program. I thought I'd do it in 3 parts to kind of warm us up, to get us thinking about the projects and people, your associates in the North Country. There are 4 or 5 participants that I think are here with us that I asked just to give a minute's worth of introduction, name, affiliation, project they're working on, maybe a little something on challenges or opportunities, just to kind of set the stage. And we have a couple of images because this work is so much about the places and the people. So that's just a little thing to get us started. Somebody's got a little background noise there. Then we were going to ask 3 colleagues who have kind of big picture and connection to important resources for all of you. our friends at Division of Historical Resources, as well as LCHIP, the wonderful grant-making organization, as well as Kathy LaPlante, who's a great Main Street expert.
I'm
Sandra, I think
sorry,
your mic is on.
Jennifer.
Yeah,
Could we ask everybody to mute? Sandra, I think Martin's phone is. I can't hear anything.
yeah. Yay, thank you. So a little bit from a few of our participants. I'll give you those names next. Then we're going to turn to a few colleagues at LCHIP, DHR, and ask Kathy LaPlante to say a few words, and then we'll open it up. And I have some sort of broad categories of things I'd love to talk through, but it's really, again, an informal conversation, and love to hear from you about your projects, what you see as needs and opportunities. So Maggie, thanks for a couple of slides. I had written down to hear from Deborah Friedman, if Deborah's up for it, then Ruben from Gorham, Christine from the Colonial, Linda from Lancaster, and Eugene in that order, if that works for you. So you'll just unmute and say hello, starting with Deborah. Deborah's ready to do. There she is.
Can you hear me?
Great.
I'm here. So I'm the chairperson for the Oral Heritage Commission. And also online today is Cheryl Lord, who is our secretary for the Oral Heritage Commission. We did have a major loss this winter with the Oral General Store. The owner has not yet fully decided whether he will rebuild or not, but this little community we need another store. And currently the situation is, because of the age of the building, there's obviously it was burnt to the ground, and there's obviously asbestos, lead paint. So it's an issue where it's in the center of town across from the school, that will be the first thing that the owner needs to take care of. He's about 92% sure. Is that right, Cheryl?
Yes.
Cheryl had talked with Bob. He's about 92% sure that he wants to rebuild, which everyone in the community is totally behind us, because like I said, we only have one other option for a store. And right now they have a COVID outbreak. So
yeah,
it's hard. It's hard for the elderly to have to drive, 30 miles in any direction and then 30 miles back. So, and I'd like to say hi to Maggie Steer, because I met Maggie years ago and she was a big help to us.
Yeah. Well, it's such a big loss, and yeah, those kind of places are so important to the health and vitality of your community, right?
Absolutely.
So maybe when we come back later, we'd love to hear about other things the Heritage Commission has been involved in, but let me turn next to the next person for another introduction. Ruben, you're up.
Great, thanks. I grew up in Keene, and I was a history buff from early days. And we've lived up here in the North Country since the 70s. I've been involved with the Gorham Historical Society and the Railroad Museum for about 10 years. And at this point, we're at the beginning stages of what I would call a second historic preservation effort. The first was in the late 70s, when a group of people got together and got ownership of the depot, which was unused for probably about 10 years at that point, and turned it into a museum and set up the Historical Society. And they did quite a bit of work to restore that building at that point. But then since then, it kind of has stalled out to some extent. It's functioned, and we've run it as a museum, and it's a great building. And like all volunteer organizations, we have ups and downs. Now we are trying to get the building on the state register for the first time. It's been nominated apparently, and we're in the process of filling out that application now. And then we'll go for the federal register. We're also working on, in the near future, on a building assessment grant. with the Preservation Trust to get a more formal look at the building. I think we think we have a pretty good handle on the needs and the different approaches, but we want some other people to help us look at it and develop a detailed plan, and then come back and try for a second time for a 1772 grant, or perhaps in the long run, an LCHIP grant.
That's great. It's a classic snapshot that you're offering and another really important building. So I'm sure we'll come back to you later on to hear more about what you're involved in and answer questions that you have.
Sure. Great.
Christine, are you ready to say a little something?
Sure. So my name is Christine Kelly, and I'm the new executive director at the Colonial Theater. Stephen, our founding director, is working his way gradually to a well-deserved retirement after over 20 years of kind of making the Colonial what it is today. And so for those of you who are less familiar with the Colonial, we are the oldest continuously operating movie theater in the country. There is one other theater that claims that, but I'd like to see their proof. So, you know, COVID has kind of presented a set of very unique challenges to large indoor community gathering spaces, of course. And so we found ways to kind of work around that with virtual offerings. And this upcoming season, we're hoping to do some stuff outside as well. But the project that we're working on that kind of falls into the more usual category of historic preservation for us, which is part of our mission statement, is updating and keeping the paint fresh on the side of our over 100-year-old wood frame building in Bethlehem, New Hampshire. So the Colonial as a brick and mortar institution, there's always a lot of important upkeep work that needs to be done, and needs to be done in the proper way to kind of really maintain the historic prestige that the Colonial has. And then of course, COVID kind of presents the issue of air filtration and all that kind of stuff. So the project that we're focusing on now is the outdoor upkeep of the side of the building. But you know, we are also trying to get in contact with some HVAC contractors and just talk to them about what it would look like to implement proper high-level air filtration within our institution. Because of course, the building wasn't created to accommodate that in 1914.
Right, right. Great snapshot. Thank you so much for that, and welcome to the role, I guess.
Yeah, thanks.
Just kind of maybe there's buildings in these pictures, but maybe Linda, just stepping back, I guess I was thinking of your introduction relative to more of even of the idea of Main Street and cumulative effort in a community. But say whatever you want to in your introduction. Linda Uppenbornstein.
Hi. Yeah, I've added doctor in the front of it just because Jill Biden got so much grief. So, yes, I live in Lancaster. I'm a past board member of the Alliance. So, and I taught history and heritage at Plymouth State in the past, and have worked with and have had students work on the history of Lancaster, along with my friend Rebecca Moore, who was supposed to be on this. I don't know if she is or not. Lancaster is a catch-22 community in many ways. The people, the owners of these buildings that you see here are passionate about restoration and adaptive reuse. The town fathers, because they're all men, are not so much. So it is a struggle, and yet the people have put it in their master plan. They really want it. I'm hoping that eventually we'll get some new elected officials and that attitude will change. What is not on here is a new project that's taking hold down the street a little bit and may fall outside of this, and that's the Lancaster Motel. Ruby and Brian Berryman are doing a retro restoration of that building, and they've done a really great job so far. So it kind of completes the Main Street area. It's actually just beyond the Rialto. If you saw the Rialto Theater, and could go down that street a little bit more, you would come across the old Lancaster Motel, which had pretty much fallen into disrepair. They have uh, introduced a lot of interesting features, and cleaned it up and restored it, and hope to continue to do that. Um, I assume we're going to go into this in more detail. The next building you see is one I work closely with. Is my trainer, who I've been working with for over 13 years. And I am a kind of crazy weightlifter. And so he's in a wheelchair, and we helped him to the Alliance of the town. He has investors, helped him to buy the gray building that you see here, Rizfit, and he owns the building, and he has 3 apartments upstairs. It has been a challenge during COVID. He's lost $40,000 in the gym this year. And there are times we're not sure if it's going to survive, but the community has been very supportive. And even when they couldn't get in, they wanted to pay their memberships. So we're hopeful that will continue. The bottom building, of course, is PJ Noise. So I'll just kind of leave all the rest of it to later.
But we'll circle back. Thank you so much, Linda. And thank you for your work in the incremental investments over time in that community, in your community for sure. I guess we're going to finish off the intros section if he's free with Eugene Reed. I know if you saw his picture, he actually is working with his students on site right now. Is he available?
Yes.
There he is.
Well, yeah.
Thank you so much.
My name is Eugene Reed. I have my students. We're on site today. We're on site every day in Colebrook, New Hampshire. I teach the Building Construction and Restoration Carpentry program at the Career Center that serves Northern Coos County and Essex County, Vermont. We've been restoring homes with high school students for many, many years. This year, it's our first job in Colebrook. It's a very exciting job. We're currently working on stabilizing the house and working on the mechanical systems. The house was slated for demolition. They wanted to turn it into a parking lot. There was a group of community people that got together and got the project, and they donated it to the program. So we're stabilizing the house right now. Our big project we really wanted to get into was the reconstruction of the carriage barn, but it was too far gone. So we had the students measured up, do a set of drawings so it can be replicated. We're currently seeking funding for that project. We have funding for a summer program that would hire the students. We have funding for that. We have some funding for materials, but we're still pretty short on that. We're doing, like I say, electrical systems, concentrating on insulation, heat, and then as soon as spring hits, we're going to get outside and get a coat of paint on it. As you can see in the picture, it needs it bad. But it's nice. It's nice working in Colebrook. I think this is really great for Colebrook. I think historic preservation in Colebrook may have been ignored a little bit for a long time. And I think this is kind of awoken the community to preservation and what can be done. You know, once they're gone, they're gone. So it's great. The town's been nice to work with. The guys on the road crew, everyone. We're working with Garland Mill out of Lancaster for the carriage barn to help us with the program. We're hoping we'll have a nice relationship with them and be able to get the carriage barn built. But I'm available anytime. If anyone ever wants to come up to Colebrook, we're here every afternoon. You're welcome to come and look around. Love to have you.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you. And those themes of the who and the how, the resources, both human and financial, I think are going to come up over and over in our discussion. But certainly love what you've been doing with that high school program. And I'm sure people will have questions for you later as you're available. I know you need to pop back and forth, Eugene, but let's turn now. Maggie, I think you could get rid. Thank you. Would love just to hear a little bit from our representatives from LCHIP, Division of Historical Resources, and our Main Street expert, Kathy. Just kind of introductory comments. I know you each could talk for an hour about your programs and processes, but just kind of to let the rest of the group where you're coming from, maybe some ideas relative to opportunities and challenges from your perspective. So Ben, do you want to go first? And then we'll open it up after this.
Sure, Jennifer. See everybody here. This is really wonderful, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm Ben Wilson. I'm the director of the Division of Historical Resources, the State Historic Preservation Officer, and within our division, we have programs that probably touch almost all of these projects going on, and to be able to focus on the North Country is, I think, really important. It's, as we hear often, people often forget about the part of New Hampshire north of Franconia, and we have so many wonderful resources, economic development projects, things contributing to the state as a whole, that it's important we focus a lot of our efforts up there. Some of the programs that we oversee, just quickly, the State Register, the National Register of Historic Places, federal historic tax credits, our Moose Plate grants, which total just about $150,000 this last year. We run the CLG program, which is a requirement of our National Park Service funding, which equaled a little more than $65,000 this last year. And we're in the process of finalizing our 5-year required preservation plan for the state. That should be coming out in the next couple months. So that's just a quick overview. I'm really thrilled to see Mr. Reed and his program up north. I'm a huge fan of trades programs, preservation trades programs. That's part of my past. And it's really the younger folks that are the wave of the future, and will look after their communities. So hats off to them.
Great, thanks, Ben. And we'll make sure to put links to these different folks' programs in the email we send after the event too, and you'll get a chance to ask questions as well. Is it George or Digit that I'm calling on next?
I think probably it's good for each of us to get to speak. I'll give a broad overview of the program, and then I'll leave George to talk very briefly about basic eligibility and the selection criteria that allows us to give a little bit of preference to the North Country. So I'm Digit Taylor. I have had the honor of being the executive director of LCHIP for the past 10 years. And we have the fabulous opportunity in this program of giving away $3 to $4 million a year to help with land conservation and historic preservation. So, and if you wear a moose plate on your car, we thank you for that, because that helps to pay for our salaries and our rent and useful things like that. And then I think, George, why don't you go ahead and tell them eligibility and the one selection criteria that applies here.
Sure. So yes, as Digit said, we give out money for historic preservation projects. Most of those kinds of projects are restoration or rehabilitation type activities. Although we also award monies for historic structure reports or historic building assessments. And we've awarded a few grants for the acquisition of historic properties as well. To be eligible for LCHIP funding, we need to have an eligible entity, which means either a political subdivision of the state of New Hampshire in the complicated legalese of the statute that governs our work. Basically means a municipality or a county or a school district or something like that. Or you need to be a 501c nonprofit. 501c nonprofit, yeah, tax exempt, recognized as tax exempt by the Internal Revenue Service. Although other entities can take advantage of the program by partnering with entities that are eligible. You need to have an eligible scope of work, which means the work needs to comply with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, which is a rather long and wordy way of saying best practices for historic preservation in the United States. What else?
Eligible. No, you're good.
Okay.
I was going to say eligible project, but you covered enough of that.
Yep.
And you
So
have a bunch of successful grantees over time here with us today, and
yes,
probably some people in the pipeline.
I
some
see Jamie
projects in the
Davis out there, who's spearheading a project at the Marion Blodgett Museum in Stratford. I saw the Lancaster in the Parker J. Noyes building in Lancaster.
Yep.
Did hinted at the one of the selection criteria that may be of, maybe kind of nice to keep in mind, which is that, we're a statewide organization, and one of our selection criteria is to make sure that we have statewide representation in each grant round. And for a variety of reasons, which I think, you can probably all understand, the southern part of the state tends to, get a lot of attention and funding and so forth from other sources. But we are under a mandate to, spread things around. So we like to see applications from qualified organizations with qualified resources in the North Country. And just that thing about qualified resources, any resource that is meant to benefit from an LCHIP grant needs to be either listed or determined eligible for listing officially on either the state or the state of New Hampshire or the National Register of Historic Places. So Ben hinted at that a moment ago when he talks about the state register and the National Register. All the people who get LCHIP funding have to get through that process first, make sure their resource is officially eligible.
Part of LCHIP's vision is that we help to protect something, a historic resource that is important in every community in the state. And there's a lot of communities in the North Country that have not yet given us the opportunity to help with something that they've identified as important. And as I said early in the meeting, I lived in Berlin for 12 or 13 years, and that gives me a special feeling for the issues and concerns of some of the North Country communities.
Yep. Thank you for that. And Kathy, I know you could give us a all-day presentation on strategies for Main Streets to help them survive and thrive. Do you just want to, and Kathy's the Senior Program Officer for the National Main Street Center, but we're so happy she's a New Hampshire resident. She's the former director of our great and effective statewide program. So thanks for joining us, Kathy.
Yeah, absolutely, Jennifer. Good to see you all. And I'm pretending to be in New Hampshire, though I've been in Wisconsin since Thanksgiving. I'm coming back next week, so I'm happy about that. Yeah, we're part of the subsidiary of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So a lot of what we do in downtowns is built upon your preservation and your historic assets in the downtowns. And typically we work with many communities on preserving those buildings, but also making them economically viable and making sure we have great business mixes in our downtowns, marketing downtown. Last year we gave away just south of $3 million. That's not a lot nationwide, but we're a nonprofit program too that really works to empower communities. And so I had the pleasure of working with Colebrook, Lancaster, Littleton, Berlin, Lisbon, Ossipee. They were all in our Main Street program when it was active, although the New Hampshire program's been inactive for 10 years. We do have a membership program that's open to everybody, and some of those programs make grants available to you. And I would just say visit our Main Street America website. Also, we have a YouTube channel, so lots of training that's available for you for free on, what do you do to help your businesses deal with COVID and getting online. And so a lot of those resources are available to you as well. And we have a recovery toolkit on our website, and all intended to, take advantage of the greatest asset, which we think each of your downtowns has, which is your historic downtown and the independent businesses that are there. And that's what's driving your economy. So that's what our program's all about. And I'll leave it at that, and we can open it up for other things, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, everybody. Does anybody have any direct questions for the three entity agencies related to LCHIP, DHR, or Main Streets? Nobody right now? Christine.
Yeah, so I guess my question is around the pandemic, of course. It's like hard not to be trying to think about things strategically, considering how buildings are able to be used right now or not. And I'm wondering if LCHIP is considering building any kind of language around the pandemic into their granting programs going forward. So like if a community space is no longer able to be used as it was, if that's something that could be addressed, if we have a solution to present for a grant proposal, if that's something that would be considered, or if it wouldn't. Yes.
This is a new idea to me. I'm not fully clear what kinds of things you might be talking about, Christine.
So we don't have any kind of ventilation in our theater right now.
Okay.
And while it's not mandated by the state to be open, of course, we want to operate as safely as possible. And that would, on top of all of the other state required things, give us more peace of mind and might also make audiences feel more comfortable coming back. So that's a type of capital project that doesn't fall under historic preservation by any means. But obviously we would be considering that while working on a project of that caliber. And so that's kind of my specific example.
That's a great question, I think, for LCHIP specifically, and then just as a larger question about resources, those non-historic things that make the historic buildings viable, right? So whether it also could be ADA access or new boiler, in addition to things like what you just described, Christine. You went Digit and then Ben, maybe? Or Ben and then Digit, you guys decide.
Yeah, Ben wants to start in on this one. I'm happy to have a few more minutes to think over a good way to respond.
Who's got the background noise that they need to turn off?
I think it's Sandra Martin. It's nothing on.
So Christine, I would encourage you to reach out to, and maybe you've already done this, but reach out to the Council on the Arts, Virginia Loopy, and I can send you her contact info if you don't have it. It should be on the New Hampshire Council for the Arts website. But I think that there is some funding coming into the pipeline through the next CARES Act, if you will, monies that should help out for reopening, because I know that task force is busy trying to figure out how to spend some money that's already available and then also future monies.
Yeah, I bother Ginny on a daily basis, but that is a great recommendation. Yeah.
That's good. And that's great. And I'm happy also to talk to her, because so many of the projects where they're trying to get this funding into our historic buildings. And so there are a lot of synergies there that we should be connected on.
So that's a good macro point too. Any other funding ideas? I know Northern Border Regional Commission, NBRC grants have helped old building projects in the North Country. I don't know I know the Community Loan Fund is doing some interesting work with agriculture, which is a different point, but any other agency ideas, sources and uses related to this?
It's quite a stretch for LCHIP. I mean, normally any kind of modernization can be allowed if the historic structures report suggests that that's an important part of preservation, but because this COVID stuff is so new, that wouldn't be in your report. Our board regularly struggles with how to balance straight out historic preservation with the other kinds of things that buildings require to be able to open and operate. And they have not at this point in time considered whether they would like to tweak their focus in any way for for this year's grant round. They do, however, have one of their optional selection criteria has to do with the priorities of the state. So if they wanted to interpret that to mean helping historic buildings to get open following the problems of COVID, that could be something that they would consider looking at in this year's grant round.
Thanks for that, Christine. People want to talk about other tools like state or national register, building assessments, easements, 79DE Linda.
79D, no. So, I just wanted to mention that in my working with Lancaster and other projects throughout, one of the things that is, and I'm sure you have, I know that Maggie has run into this, and I know you have, that we've talked about this, Jennifer, and I know Ben and I have talked about this, is, we mentioned the funding aspect. The $5,000 doesn't do anything for people, most people locally. Assessments don't really give them. So now they know that, oh, gee, I'm never going to be able to fix this. So it's a poor region and grants don't cover what they need to get these projects done. I was talking to the people at the Lancaster Motel. They said they got a barn grant assessment, but all it does is tell them how much more money they need to spend than what they already have. And so it gets frustrating for people who already don't have money. And that goes to my building that not my building, but Peter Rizzo's building, his RISVIP building. I mean, this is a person who has no money. He's in a wheelchair. He had absolutely no money, bought the building with investors and by the mercy of Pasumsic Bank. But one of the things we were lucky about is that when they did the bridge project in Lancaster way back in the 80s, the state SHPO office had done, an evaluation as the one in the section 106 guidelines. And that building apparently was significant enough that they actually wrote a statement of significance that it pertains specifically to that building. And that allowed us to immediately apply for the very newly passed, but not comprehended RSA 79E. So we jumped right on that. We did the application. The town had no idea what was going on. Basically, I could have sent them anything and they would have said, okay, cool. I don't know if anybody else has applied for it. What it has done has been to freeze Peter's property taxes from the time the building was built for 9 years because we have rental units up top. For somebody who's struggling, that makes a big difference, particularly since I am terrified our taxes are going to skyrocket following this crisis. So I now know that his are going to be stabilized no matter what. So I don't know how many towns in the North Country have 79E. I would be happy to talk with them. I know that Lancaster was very pleased to do this for Peter, but they really do not, the selectmen at the time really didn't know what they were getting involved in. And so I think it would behoove us to make that process as smooth and easy and comprehensible as possible. It's like applying for these PPP things. People up here, they're overwhelmed. They don't have the professional body of people at their fingertips. They have to do this on their own. And it is very, very difficult. I have a PhD. I've been working with also in bookkeeping for all my entire life, law firm bookkeeping, business bookkeeping. I'm doing Peter's. I find that the whole PPP process mind-boggling. And I called the Stuart Gates over in Vermont and said, you got to help me with this. So I don't.
Well, thank you so much for saying
I think
that.
that's something that needs to be done.
I mean, I think we can always do a better job at that in terms of being there to help support that adoption at the local level, that first application, the connection to the right kind of contractor. I mean, that is very much part of our mission and activities, but we always look to be better at it. And you all can help by being mentors, like Linda just offered. She would help somebody with their 79E application, or helping us with a network or of more people that can help with barn preservation or plaster repair, just so we can be helping to connect the dots from you and your knowledge to other folks. I think there's a lot of local option tools that are underused because people don't know about them, or local municipal staff turns over. And it often isn't until there's a bigger project or somebody saying, this is a go or no go for my project. I need this property tax relief. And then it happens on the local level. So that's very much of interest to us to help get more communities connected to those kind of processes and tools that help get, reduce obstacles and help get more historic preservation activity done.
I've been typing away in the chat as people have been talking.
Thank you, Maggie. Yep.
And there are a ton of resources. I think from having done field service for 10 years, the best advice I could give all of you is shoot us an email when you need something, when you're stuck, when you're thinking, hey, can you give me any more ideas for a grant? Or I need a contractor for this. Little questions like that, we can probably answer for you. And it's those tiny incremental steps that will get you to where you want to be. And we really do have our fingers on the pulse, or we know who to talk to get you the assistance you need. It really has to be a collaborative effort, I think, for these North Country projects to succeed. And we really do want to try to help.
I just
Are there other specific points?
I just wanted to add one more thing about Ben Southworth and Garland Mills. They're doing the PJ Noyes building. I am really excited about this. This is the first time a North Country contractor has really immersed themselves in this kind of project. And Ben is very excited and works with Mike Brass, former board member, who is just really on top of him and has inspired him. So I think we're at a turning point in the North Country. We just need to find the way to get people the tools to make it, as you noted, to make it happen. And I'm also excited. I'm sorry. One more exciting thing, and then I'm going to shut up. One more exciting thing. I had a Stonewall rebuilt this summer, kind of the old-fashioned way. Sue Booth was up here watching it with me, and the young man who was doing the Stonewall had moved here with his wife from the Midwest and bought a old farmhouse in Bethlehem, and are very excited about finding ways to restore it. And I think this is a trend of the future for this region, and I just want to make sure these people have the tools they need to make it happen.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, Eugene, I guess I'd love to hear from you what you think the tipping point will be, that, we don't expect all of your kids to want to stay in the North Country. That's not the nature of human beings. But what would it take that more would stick around, the whole, keeping the talent close in to our communities? Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? And Lorraine, I don't know if you want to say anything too, just about the work you've done with the Nexus to Housing.
I will say that, young people like preservation. Their attitude when they first approach it is you should have let them tear it down. And then as you repair it and they learn to do plaster work and they work with an electrician, they work with a plumber, they like it. They want to own an old house. It's almost this generation that I'm working with now, they're embarrassed that they don't know anything about the tools in the toolbox. We have a generation of video gamers, but once you get them on site, I mean, I have 15 students on site right now, and they're all busy. At least they sound like they are. There is hope. And yes, most of them do. They're our greatest export. I send more kids to Southern New Hampshire and over into Maine, but they do want to come back. They find that they go away for 7 to 10 years, and then they do want to come back to the North Country, and they do want to be part of it. And I think the opportunities now are here in the North Country as the generation of carpenters and plumbers are retiring. So it's good. I have hope.
Yeah. Lorraine, do you want to pop in, not to put you on the spot, but sort of the whole next generation and land use issues?
Sure. Jennifer's referring to a book and documentary film project I've been involved with, Communities and Consequences 2, Rebalancing New Hampshire's Human Ecology. Some of you may have seen the documentary film. The book, their companions are not duplicates, and the book has a whole chapter on Lancaster. It also has some information about Littleton and some of the other towns in the North Country. But this is about our state's unbalanced demography, where we've gotten to have so many more old people and lost young people. Our birth rate is below our death rate, and all, so all of these issues are very important to the whole state, but nowhere more than in the North Country. And I think Lancaster and Littleton are both great examples of how historic preservation efforts and creative reuse of these buildings is making the kind of vibe in a community that does appeal to more young people. I know when I talked to, interviewed some of the people in Lancaster, like the assistant principal at the high school, who said it's become much easier to hire teachers. They're getting stronger candidates because people are wanting to come there now. And I just think that's all critical. So all of what you guys are all doing is important beyond protecting the historical resources. They're really, the people and the buildings go together. We always say that in the Preservation Alliance, don't we, Jennifer?
Yep. Thank you for that. Thanks.
So we got a question about climate change, and is that an issue in the North Country? And my sort of glib thought was, it's working in favor of North Country towns, maybe, but would anyone like to speak to that? Is that an issue? Is that a concern? Or is it really more about housing and jobs and access to services?
My sense is that you're right. The climate change will benefit the North Country as people migrate from dry southern states, from California and elsewhere, to the northern part of the US, to New England. We're seeing it already happen with people who are moving into our region. The downside is that the prices that some of these people are paying for properties is like skyrocketing. They come in with a lot of money. It's good and bad. But on the positive side, they're bringing ideas, they're bringing resources, energy, skills. And we need that because there's been such a long out migration.
I would echo that too from Bethlehem. I mean, even tying into what you were saying, Lorraine, we've seen a large influx of remote workers over the past several years, in particular after the pandemic hit. And so as an institution, the Colonial's been thinking about, well, how can we engage these people in a more significant way? To be, full disclosure, my partner, he has been working remotely for the past like 7 years. So I think that there is a lot of opportunity there, whether that's just driven from a different generation lifestyle or the pandemic causing more companies to consider remote work. That presents challenges with the housing shortage, et cetera, but it also presents opportunities for local communities and institutions. And for the piece on climate change, I mean, at the Colonial, while we don't have to think about it on a day-to-day basis as like an existential threat, like we have seen across the North Country region, and especially in the southern part of the state, there was an extreme drought for this entire year. And in fact, southern parts of the state are still in a drought, and people are still being told to monitor their wells. And so as we're looking forward as a historic institution, we're thinking about how, like, should we think about a solar array? Should we, all of this kind of stuff where we can try to stay ahead of the impacts on our institution and on our community that will eventually be a problem and not just a benefit of kind of causing more people to come up here.
Thanks for those comments.
Just to go back to climate change, there are more and more, like the young farmer, and there are more and more people looking at climate change, but it's not the average, I think, person who has an older building who lives in the town. Really, it's nothing that is on their radar. That being said, I mentioned Ben Southworth before. The Southworths have been very responsible for bringing solar to large sections of Lancaster and tightening up houses. I've been working with Ben on assessing my house. The only thing I do have to work to, I think that, I think Mike is helping on Mike Brust, but I think it's something I've been arguing for a long time is coming up. And I think what you're doing in Colebrook is fantastic. but to educate people, builders, contractors. Ben is like, well, I want to tear that fireplace down because there's a lot of air loss. And I'm like, no, you're not doing that. Sorry. So trying to explain to him, but Linda, you're going to lose a lot of heat. I don't care. You're leaving the fireplace. So it's hard for them to kind of find that middle ground between
Design solutions
energy.
that do
Right.
both. Right. That's a tension over time. I think it's getting better, but there's still more work to be done. I guess it was just mentioned kind of weatherization and resilience kind of things too, related to the issue of climate change. You stewards of old buildings thinking, or anybody with an old house, just thinking about investing in it over time to deal with weather events that will be more part of our future. I guess I'm looking at the clock and I'm just thinking if there's anybody who hasn't typed up who wants to, I'd love to hear from you. I kind of feel like we should go back to Errol if you want us to go back to you. Told us that story at the beginning, and if you want to ask a question or offer us another idea before we close, I'd love to hear it. And I would just spend the last minute or two just talking about messages related to historic preservation. Sort of, what do you feel really works in terms of talking to town officials or your neighbor or the next young people? How do we sort of sell and educate people about these concepts we've been talking about today to be as effective as possible? So is there anybody, do you want to say anything, or anybody else who hasn't gotten to say anything yet?
Sandra Martin, she unmuted herself, so I wonder if she wanted to say something.
No, I'm just interested. I have been going up to the North Country for probably 60 years. Millsfield in particular, so I'm very familiar with stores in Colebrook as well as Errol, and I've always loved that part of the state, and I still do. I'm just very interested in what's going on, and hopefully, you know, the historical buildings can be restored. I just don't want it to change too much because it's too perfect the way it is. So.
Thank you.
I even wrote a couple of one book is called Portraits in Nature, and it's poetry and prose. This was not published, this was self-published, and the inspiration was that part of the state. So
that's wonderful, just to make that point about the inspiration afforded and the desire to help from people who don't necessarily live there. Deb or Cheryl, did you want to, or anybody else want to type in?
Sandra, mute again. I don't know if she's got outdoor noise, but I can't hear her anything.
Okay.
I haven't.
Oops.
Yeah.
Why?
Anybody else? No? Eugene.
So we have started a middle school program, 7th and 8th graders. Just little stuff, and an exciting group to work with. Anyone who knows me knows that 7th and 8th graders I just soon stay away from. But we started this, and it's quite remarkable, quite enjoyable. And I think that anytime we have an opportunity to bring someone in to a project or even construct a little something with them, I think it's going to help our cause. I think we just need to introduce, the younger generation to all of this.
That's a really great point. So as you said, like getting your hands on it, figuring out how it works, the whole like learning to look thing, showing people, having people look up, having people understand what street signs are related to, the history and evolution of the different buildings that you're stewarding. Did Errol folks want to say anything else? Not putting you on the spot. You can wave me off or not.
Well, we have the original jailhouse that sits right on Main Street. It's in deplorable condition. We have tried for over 10 years to get grant money. It is not listed on a state register or anything like that. We have always been declined because we do not have a photo of the interior We do know from a long 11-year member of the Heritage Commission who recently passed what the jail cells looked like. Our goal with this was to renovate it, including putting one jail cell back in and using it as display for the hundreds upon hundreds of items that we had donated that are now just stored on the 3rd floor of Errol Town Hall. Since the elevator in Errol Town Hall only goes to the 1st floor, and I don't ever think it's going to go to the 3rd floor, we have no display space. We have museum quality, matted, framed, all kinds of photos that now hang in the Errol Town Hall for the public to see, but we have oodles and oodles. So because we haven't been able to get grant money to restore the building, we have done fundraisers over the years, including 4 giant lumberjack festivals.
Yeah.
The last few years, except for this year, we did not do a calendar of the beautiful area that we live in, and we are so fortunate to live here. So we have raised some money through these, and I would put this question to Mr. Reed. How do we hire those Canaan High School students to start? The building is falling into such disrepair that it's going to eventually just be gone. And we have put aside $3,000 just to get started. It needs a new roof, it needs new clapboards. It was set onto a cement platform. And when they had to move it 18 inches off of somebody's property, fully onto town property, the cornerstone, the corner of the cement, that broke. So now the animals can get up inside. And it's just, this has been going on since 2003. It's pretty disappointing that nowhere where we try can we get money. I mean, we've tried Tillotson many years in a row, Samuel P. Hunt Foundation, we've tried everybody. And we just,
We're happy to help you with a restart if you have the energy for it. And I think there's a program on the state register coming out of Ben's office in a few weeks. There is planning grant money available from the Preservation Alliance. I think you've heard a few other people on this call that are a couple of steps ahead of you in terms of working on these kind of community projects. Ruben at the top was sort of describing the steps that they're taking during this whole kind of second phase of restoration work. The folks, the Coas Historical Society are also a few steps ahead of you in that jail project. So we'd love to help you figure it out. They are complicated, and I'm sure it's frustrating that you've had so many no's, but maybe there's an opportunity for a restart there.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yep. And Eugene, you must get this question frequently. Can we be next? Right now you have a particular model where you're buying and restoring and reselling, so you've got dollars to do the next house, right? That's pretty much your model?
Yes. Yeah, all the money goes into the project. No one makes any money on the deal. We basically sell it for what we have into it and do it again.
Yep.
And the restoring an old house takes a lot more skill than building a new house. So any student that goes through a program and has, throw away the level, it's not going to do you any good. The skill level is much higher. So when if they do go into new construction, it's easy for them. You can always talk to your local career center. Everyone has a building trades program. They might not jump into it, but maybe they can help you with a part of it. Maybe they could fabricate something at their shop or, help out in some way. If you can get them to change directions, that would be a good thing.
We want to take you on the road, Eugene.
Yeah, Eugene, have you talked to others in the field about your work? I mean, I just would like, I know students and tend to like build houses and whatnot, but I think what you're doing is is amazing. And it brings, I think what it does is it takes that, students go home and their enthusiasm is disseminated to their families, who then start to think more historically. And it really comes from the children up. So if we indoctrinate the children to our way of thinking, then maybe we'll start to see change. But your project is something I have been wishing for years, and I'm just I'm very excited and would like to see it in all the schools.
I think it's a lot about the person, even more than the institution. So I think we need Eugene to spark other people like him to take it on. Yeah. So I'm just watching the clock and feel like I need to wrap. Maggie, do you feel like we're pretty caught up in terms of the chat questions?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you for that. And right, know that we're a phone call away, and that we'll this post event email that I keep referring to, I will stick a bunch of links in that, and then you'll have our email address to be back in touch as you wish. I really appreciate your time. I know we at the Preservation Alliance got a lot out of this, and hope you take away a spark or two. I'll use that term again. If you'll just take a few minutes to fill out a survey that'll be in that post-event email, that's really helpful for us to be planning ahead. And as I mentioned, there will be a set of other programs, some coming out of the Division of Historical Resources, others sponsored by us, that I hope will be helpful to you in the weeks and months going forward. So stay healthy. Thanks for all that you're doing on the ground, and thanks for your time today. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Jennifer.